Hi, this will be the first episode in a series of Python bits where we will look at unpacking. Unpacking is a technique to have something that is a sequence of sorts and then unpack it into variables. And we can use this in a number of different ways, and it is a real powerful feature of the language. So I thought we will dig deeper into this, and that's why I divided this into a number of parts. So in this first part, we will take a look at the very simple technique or the basics of unpacking and see what it can do for us. So let's have a look here at some code. Let's start with having a list of something. We can have a list of numbers. And just assign it some values. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then let's say we have some variables. Let's say we have A and B. Or actually we can have A, B, C, and D. And assign it list of numbers like this. If we print them, we print A, we print B, we print C, and we print D. We will see that each of these values from the original list is now unpacked into each of these variables. So the first value here, 1, goes into the first variable, the second 2 goes into the second variable, and so on. What we need to do here though is we need to match the number of variables with the number of items in this case the list. So let's say we have a 5 here and we run this. You can see that we get an error. There are too many values to unpack. So we have this last value 5 and we don't have a matching variable for that. So what we can do now is that we can put a little asterisk in front of the last one here and try to unpack it and see what happens. And as you can see, the first 3 values goes into A, B, and C just as it did before. But now the D here takes the rest. So it could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3, it could be hundreds of values. So if we keep on adding values here, you will see that D will catch them all. And they will end up being, in this case, a list of values. So what happens now if we don't have a value for the last one? So let's say we have 1, 2, and 3. You can see we get an empty list now. So we don't need to have that last value for D. It will just end up being an empty list. If we put some values back here, we can also we don't need to have this as the last value to catch everything. We can actually put this asterisk in front of any of these. So for example, we can say that A will catch everything, but the last 3 values will end up in B, C, and D. And as you can see, the last 3 values, 3, 4, and 5, will end up in B, C, and D, but the rest, the 1 and the 2, will now end up in A. And, of course, we can put it here. Now the first value will go into A, the last 2 values will go into C and D, and the rest will go into B. You can see this is exactly what happened. So this is a really neat technique to catch everything. And of course, we can use this in a number of ways. So I will show you another thing we can do. We'll remove these. So let's say we have a function here. Call it myfunc. And let's say it takes 3 arguments, A, B, and C. and we will just print them here. So we print A, we print B, and we print C. And let's say we have 3 values here now. So we can use this technique to pass in this list into these variables. So let's see how that works. So we call my func, and instead of course we could do something like list of numbers 0, list of numbers 1, and so on. We can do all the 3 like that. This will of course work because it will take the first value and pass it into A, the second value pass it into B, and so on. So we see that this works. It prints 1, 2, and 3. But we can use this technique of unpacking by adding an asterisk here and say list of numbers. So let's see what happens if I do this. As you can see now, this will unpack this list into the various variables A, B, and C. Now, of course, in this case, the list needs to have at least 3 values, because if it only had 2 values, we wouldn't have anything for C. So as you can see, we get an error. But what happens if we have more values? Same thing happens. Now it unpacks into A, B, and C, but then we have a 4th value and we don't have a 4th variable. So that's why we get an error here. So in this case, there needs to be as many values in this sequence as there are variables up here. So this works. And of course, this works just as well with the tuple. So if we run this, we can see it works just the same. And if this was a set, same thing applies. So this was part 1, where we could see that using this technique we can assign values to a number of variables, and we can have a variable that catch everything that we don't have room for, so to speak. So that was part 1. So see you again for part 2, where we take an even deeper look into unpacking.